On May 8, 1945, the same day Germany officially surrendered to the Allies, an American captain named Orrin Hagland was filming a scene that would become one of the most touching and mysterious documents of World War II. The footage shows a young woman, clearly in shock, with visible signs of having been assaulted. For decades, she was known only as the lost German girl, an anonymous symbol of human suffering at the end of the war. Today, we're going to tell the complete story of Laura Bauer, the woman behind this iconic image. Laura Bauer was born in 1921 in Kollerschlag, a small town in Upper Austria, near the border with Germany. It was a rural region, known for its green hills and traditional farming communities. When Laura was 17 years old, in 1938, Austria was annexed by Nazi Germany in the event known as the unsolved. Overnight, she went from being an Austrian citizen to becoming a citizen of the German Reich. Like many young women of her generation, Laura was recruited to serve the war effort. In late 1944, at just 23 years old, she was assigned to the Prague anti-aircraft department as a technical assistant, a position known as Helferin in German. Prague, the capital of occupied Czechoslovakia, was a crucial strategic point. The city housed important German military and industrial installations, including anti-aircraft defense systems, where Laura worked. In early 1945, the situation deteriorated rapidly. The Red Army was advancing from the east, while American and British armies were pressing from the west. The German and Austrian civilian population in occupied territories faced a terrible dilemma: stay and face the arrival of the Soviets, or flee west. Simultaneously, Czech partisans intensified their resistance activities. Decades of brutal occupation had fueled deep hatred against everything German. For many Czechs, the distinction between Nazi soldiers and German civilians had been lost. In April 1945, Laura made the decision to flee. Like thousands of other Germans and Austrians, she tried to escape westward, hoping to reach the American-controlled zones, where she believed she would be treated with more humanity. During her flight, Laura was captured by Czech partisans. What happened next was one of the countless personal tragedies of the war. She was brutally beaten and raped. These atrocities were not isolated. In the final chaos of the war, violence against civilians became tragically common. German and Austrian women faced dangers from all sides, from both Soviet forces and local resistance groups. Wounded and traumatized, Laura managed to continue her flight until she reached near Pilsen, in western Czechoslovakia. This region had recently been declared an American military demarcated zone. It was here that she encountered Captain Orrin Hagland of the United States Army Air Corps. Hagland was an officer with an interest in documenting the historical events he witnessed. On May 8, 1945, Victory in Europe Day, Hagland filmed Laura along the old Prague highway. The film shows a young woman clearly in a state of deep shock. Her eyes are distant, her face shows signs of physical trauma, and her movements are those of someone who has experienced indescribable horror. The film was made in color, a rarity for the time, which makes the document even more powerful. The quality of the images allows us to see details that make the experience even more impactful for those who watch. Laura's footage remained relatively obscure until 1973, when it was used in the famous BBC series, The World at War. The series, considered one of the best television documentations of World War II, used the footage as a powerful symbol of human suffering. But the BBC did not identify the woman. For decades, she was known only as the lost German girl. Researchers and historians began a search that would last decades to discover her identity. Investigators, like Carlos Sander, dedicated years trying to identify the woman. They analyzed military records, refugee archives, internment camp documents, and even interviewed survivors of the era. Through meticulous research in Austrian and German archives, researchers finally managed to identify the woman as Laura Bauer. The records confirmed birth in Koloschlag, Austria in 1921, service as Helferin in the Prague anti-aircraft department, presence in the Polsek region in May 1945. The identification was made by cross-referencing German military records, refugee documents, and eyewitness accounts from the time. Although some doubts persist, the available evidence consistently points to Laura Bauer as the woman in the film. After being filmed by Haglund, Laura was processed through the Allied internment camp system. These camps were established to process refugees, prisoners of war, and displaced civilians. Life in the camps was not easy. Millions of displaced people needed to be processed, identified, and relocated. For someone like Laura, who had suffered severe trauma, this represented just another ordeal. But Laura showed extraordinary resilience. After being released from the camps, she managed to completely rebuild her life. She found work at an airline company, where she built a stable career. Imagine the strength needed to overcome such trauma. Laura not only survived the horrors of war, but managed to build a productive and meaningful life in the following decades. Laura Bauer lived until 1994, dying at age 73. She had almost 50 years of post-war life, half a century to process, heal, and rebuild after the traumas of 1945. During all this time, she probably didn't know that her image had become an iconic symbol of suffering in World War II. Haglund's film continued to be used in documentaries, history books, and classrooms around the world. Her image represented not only her own tragedy, but that of millions of women who suffered violence during the war. She became a human face for abstract statistics of suffering. Laura's experience was not unique. It is estimated that millions of German and other nationality women suffered sexual violence during and after World War II. These crimes were committed by soldiers from all armies, including German, Soviet, American, and British. For decades, these crimes were neglected by official historiography. Only recently have historians begun to systematically examine sexual violence as a feature of war. Laura's story reminds us that behind every war statistic is a real person with dreams, fears, and hopes. She humanizes the abstract numbers we read in history books. Today, decades after her death, Laura Bauer continues to teach. Her story reminds us of the human cost of war, the resilience of the human spirit, importance of documenting and remembering the need to protect civilians during conflicts. Captain Had film became one of the most powerful historical documents of World War II, not for depicting great battles or political decisions, but for capturing a moment of genuine human suffering. When we look at Laura Bauer's film today, we don't see just an anonymous victim of war. We see a specific woman with a specific story, who lived a complete life after one of the darkest moments in human history. Laura Bauer was born in a small Austrian town, served her country during the war, suffered unimaginable tragedies, was captured on film at her most vulnerable moment, survived the internment camp system, rebuilt her life, worked for decades, and died in 1994 at age 73. Her story reminds us that history is not just about great events and famous figures. It's also about ordinary people who face extraordinary circumstances with courage and determination. The story of Laura Bauer was reconstructed through the dedicated work of historical researchers and Captain Orrin Haglund's original film. Although some details remain uncertain, her story represents the experience of millions of people who lived through the horrors of World War II. May we honor her memory by remembering not only her suffering, but also her strength, resilience, and the full life she built after the war.